Good afternoon. Welcome to today's Work Wonders webinar. We will be running for 15 minutes, starting at 2, finishing at 2:15, and we will have some time for some questions at the end of the session. My name is Kirsty McGrath. I'm the Productivity Specialist at DDLS, and today's topic we're going to be covering off saving time in Outlook. Now, if at any point you find that your screen actually goes back, do feel free to please refresh your browser. You can press F5 or your arrow up in the top in your Internet Explorer or whichever browser that you're currently using. If that is unsuccessful, then please send us a message in chat and we will have one of our moderators support you. So getting underway today, talking about saving time in Outlook. You know, we're all pretty busy, we're pretty strapped for time, and we're trying to get things done. So I'm trying to help make your life a little easier, and we're going to learn some of the top great Outlook tips that's going to save you some time. Outlook is one of those products that I get a lot of questions about. Apart from Excel, they sort of tend to be the two top ones. Usually because we spend so much time in Outlook on every day. So what we're going to do is we're going to discover a range of tips that hopefully you can spend a little bit more time on the things that actually matter. Now we're going to be looking at things like the notifications that come up, your calendar entries, how to do those quickly, what we can do with conversations, our meeting responses, using your quick access toolbar or your QAT as I will be calling it, understanding your quick steps, your out of office, emailing, and then clutter and what actually is clutter. So I'm going to jump straight into our demo, and don't forget that at any point you can save time by making sure that you're accessing your Outlook anywhere, anytime, and it's free across all devices. So as it comes up on the screen, it'll take it a moment for it to come up. Give it a chance. So one of the things that you will need to know is, well, where do you go to actually get Outlook? It is free across all your devices in terms of your, if you're putting it onto your mobile or your tablets. So go in, have a look at the website. So under products.office.com, and if you're in Australia, it's en-au, and you've got Outlook. So you can always just go in through the main site and then go in and have a look at Outlook. So it will give you some information on how to stay current, buying it, or if you're actually using your own personal Outlook.com, and then across your devices down the bottom. Give you a bit of a helpful hand. So when we go over into Outlook, one of the things that regularly comes up and that I see all the time, especially when I'm doing time management classes and training, is some of the little things that tend to distract us within our day. Outlook can be one of those, except it's never really a little thing. We're often working by other people's priorities and not by our own priorities. And one of the things that does that is the notifications that often will come up on your screen as you're working. You might be somewhere else. You might be working on an Excel document. You might be working on a particular email that's quite lengthy. So when we get new emails actually coming in, a notification will come up on the screen. And with that notification, what will happen is it usually pulls you back, pulls you back again, and it will actually, draw you into your email when you're trying to work on something. Sometimes I recommend going offline so that you can focus on what you're trying to do, but another way is you've got notifications. So down in the very bottom right-hand corner, you've got your Outlook status down the bottom in terms of notifications. If you actually go and do a right-click on your Outlook, you can go show things like your desktop alert so that it's not flicking up and drawing you back into your mail and working by other people's priorities. So I'm just going to untick that so then it won't actually come up on the screen when I receive a new email. Whether you want your icon down there or not, you can go in and do a bit of customization, and it'll turn off the notification. So you can go show, hide, and take that off from down the bottom as well. Another feature is understanding your backstage, so going to the file option, go in and have a look at the different options that you're going to get when it comes to your mail. So if I go into the backstage options now and I go in under mail, you've got your settings within here. A few different things that will really save you some time. Number one, go and turn on your spell check before sending. Really important component, and one way that you're not going to be sending out emails with spelling mistakes. But you'll also hear down the bottom, Message arrival. You've got all these bits and pieces that you can tick on and off. You'll see I've got ticked off the display, the desktop alert, and then the play a sound so it doesn't actually distract you. So I turn these kind of things off. And then that way it makes it just that little bit easier, and I'm not getting drawn away and my concentration broken when I'm trying to focus. Go and have a look at some of the settings that you've actually got in here. You know, things like if you've got your mail tips turned on, then it will be things like you're about to send this email to someone that's out of office, for example. Also, attachments, if you've ever seen the notification come up going, you haven't actually attached, you said attachment within your email, do you still want to send it? So there's some really good hints and tips that come as a part of your office. So I'm just going to hop out of there now. So that's turning off your notifications. Things like making a calendar entry really fast. So I've actually got some research here that I need to do on demographic trends, and I want to set up some time, or maybe it's a meeting between us so that we can actually get underway on it next week. An easy way is to respond with a meeting. So it's Control-Alt-R is your keyboard shortcut. So if I go respond with a meeting, it will actually drop in their name and all the details, including the email, and I can start to adjust it as necessary and send that off. Always a good idea, just so that everyone knows where you're going to be meeting. So you could be meet in a cafe downstairs, for example, and then that way you're not missing each other from desk to desk. Save yourself a little bit of time. Make sure you put a location in, common courtesies. You could also do a drag and drop onto your calendar. So maybe it was just for you. Maybe you just need to do maybe a bit of work before you meet with them. If I go drag it down the bottom onto the calendar icon, in your bar down the bottom here, navigation. So if I drop it onto calendar, it will create an appointment rather than a meeting invite between us. And it could be that for tomorrow morning, before I have that meeting with Ellen, I actually need to spend around about an hour and a half building some content for the meeting. Okay, very quick and easy ways for me to be able to work. And that was for today. Another thing is, I've got here an email trail about the hiking trip. I'm not going on the hiking trip. I've already responded to say I'm not coming. A great part is ignoring those conversations that you actually don't wish to be engaged with. Say, you know, it could be about the, I don't know, state of origin coming up, or like this hiking trip, and you don't wish to know. What you can do is go click ignore the email, and when you ignore it, it goes, do you want this to happen for all the future messages? And they're going to be moved into the deleted items. So I can go ignore this conversation, and it will actually delete everything to do with that particular conversation, and we'll put it now into my deleted items. In your cleanup, you've actually got lots of settings, folders. If it's a flow on, go and have a look. All of this is sitting in your options in the back end of where your ignores actually go for your mail. So go have a look at those options. Great way to be able to stop being harassed. In terms of tracking meeting responses, you've got different ways to be able to track your meeting response. If you have something come in, then as you send it out. So if I go over into my calendar, for example, an easy way is to do a right click and open it in a new window. That way, I've got them both open and I don't have to go backwards and forwards in terms of clicking. I can just now Alt-Tab between them. So here we are. I've got a meeting and I've actually sent it out. Have a look at whether it's actually been tracked. So you've got your tracking turned on here. You've also got other ways to be able to track it, and it'll tell you whether you've received a response. One of the things that will come up is as they hit your mailbox and a response, the way that it's actually handled is also in your backstage for your mail in terms of whether you want it tracked and where it actually puts them. So after my tracking information has come in, I can then say, where do you want it to go to? So it can actually process it and get it out of your mailbox, so that you don't actually have to then worry about them when they come in. Okay, so it can do an automatic update. Your quick access toolbar, well, what is it about that makes it of value? A lot of people have seen it. They don't necessarily use it, or they put way too much up here and it becomes no longer very quick. no more than sort of 15 to 20 items would you actually physically put up the top. Good idea to put things like, print, but if you're trying to, save paper, then maybe not have print. A really good one is if you go into More Commands, and I'm going to go and choose All Commands. So this is every single Outlook command that I can actually work with. I'm going to go down to the very bottom, and there's the work offline. I am going to add that in. Okay, because this is what I'll often have. I now want to work offline so that, one, I'm not having a whole heap of mail coming in, so that I'm distracted and pulled away because I need to spend the next 5 hours on a proposal. So I just shut down my mail effectively for a while I'm working in my mailbox. Maybe I'm trying to, declutter a little and work on everything in here. Or I want to hold on to every single mail that I need to send off until maybe 4 o'clock this afternoon when I'm going to be online and I want everything to go out. Maybe it's newsletters or, there are other ways to be able to work with it, but it's a handy one to have up there. Okay. Next feature is our quick steps. So our quick steps up the top, it's a combination of different steps that you might ordinarily do. Things like, rather than me dragging and dropping something into a particular folder, so this one, happy hour, it's kind of, clutter, I'm going to drop it into clutter. I could set myself up with a move to and choose the folder that I want it to go into. And it's a standard feature then that's actually set up. So I can go, where do I want it to go? And I'll just go, okay, save. So from here on in, every time I click on that, it's going to then automatically send it over into clutter. You can set it up where it's got new emails to your manager. It's going to ask you, well, who is your manager? And it's going by default, who in the system is the manager, and go save. So now, when I go click on to manager, it's going to forward and automatically drop them in. So it's got some really great sort of auto-processing. If you've ever used templates in Outlook, sometimes they can be, they can take a little bit and it can be tricky. You can even set up templates. So I've got one here called invoice. I send this off and it's regular, it's off to a client. I can then start to drop in information. It's got everything that I need in there as a template. It's also marked as high important, and it's actually put in a reminder as well to go with it. How did I do that? So I've just gone and created a new quick step. And you've got, what do you want to do? There are lots of different features in here. It could be categorizing and marking, always moving, creating new meetings. So there's all these different ones. So I did one that was a new message. I said who it was to. I've added an action, okay? And as a part of that, I've done things like set it as important. I've shown the options, and in there I've gone, what was the subject? It needed a flag. Is it high importance? And I've typed in my text and saved it. So then I've kind of generated a template for me to really quickly and easily use every single week, for example. So these are sorts of, really easy, quick steps that you can start to create. Have a click around. Start creating some yourself. Out of office messages are actually located in the back. I've got one here, and the great thing about it is I can actually set it to go for next week. Okay, so I can say when is it that it's going to be done. I'm on leave, and I can then go, okay. So it doesn't have to be now. I can set for an advanced time. That way I don't forget as I go rushing out the door on Friday. Searching. So search is a really great feature. So if I wanted to go search for something in particular, it could be, let's have a look for the word change. I knew we were talking about change, and I thought there was an attachment. So it's now going along and having a look at your attachment. Look at your search tools. Have a look at your recent. Okay, so there's lots of other tools within here. Use the new contextual tab up the top to start really filtering it down, and it will bring everything in that you need. It's easy to go across more than just your current mailbox with your little drop-down arrow here. You can save them for future. Okay, so these are some of the really great features of 2013. So get in and actually search. Now if I'm over and I'm actually in my Outlook online, so I'm in my OWA version, so in Office 365, when I got over here, when we had that clutter box, so over in my mail you saw that clutter box that was actually sitting there. A really great feature about Office 365 is you've got what's called clutter, and it actually learns from your actions. It determines your messages that you're probably going to ignore just based on the way that you simply do things. It's got this whole learning process, so it's a machine learning. Okay, so it's really suited for those that tend to sort of pile up messages. Maybe it's stuff that you don't generally tend to read, it's newsletters, and it helps you take control of your mailbox, so it learns as you work. But it needs to be turned on. So I'm going to go into my tools, and over in my options, I'm going to go in there and I'm actually going to turn it on, because underneath mail is clutter. So at the moment underneath clutter, it's got don't separate items identified as clutter. So it's actually turned off at the moment. But what I can do is I can turn it on, and then what will happen is it'll start to learn your patterns, and then that way you'll find that emails will actually be put into clutter. Things like newsletters that you don't tend to read all the time, things that you tend to be repetitively ignoring or moving or deleting. Okay, so it will start to recognize that, and you can actually work with it and fix it as it goes along if you've decided that it's not quite learnt the way that you want it to. Okay, so these are some of the really great features of being able to set up and work with your mail. Now, a lot of the features that I've shown you, you've got very similar within your O365, including things like categorize and moving and working with your calendar. So if we go over into calendar, you'll actually see in here I'm using things like my categories so that I understand exactly what I've got on when I'm meeting with clients, when I'm just building content myself. So you set up your categories for you. Okay, you can say what they're going to be, whether it's a call, makes it quick and easy to understand. So if I'm working with team members, I'm showing this now. So I've got multiple calendars. Here they're separate. I'm actually putting them in overlay mode so I can work out when we can actually meet together and what our free time and busy time is. So these are some of the real quick and easy ways for you to be able to not just work yourself but also work with others and understand when you're going to get what you actually need. Look, always do things like go and press F1, which is your help key. There's an awful lot of information, some really great tools and hints and tips. Get to know your keyboard shortcut because it will actually make life a lot easier for you. Go and look them up. Go and find out what some of the best keyboard shortcuts actually are. Type it in. Find out what these are, and it will make life a little quicker and easier for you. If you're not too sure, then there's an awful lot of help online, and Microsoft provide a lot of help for you to be able to get up to speed and use some of these hints and tips. Okay, so we're coming back over, and next week we're going to be discussing projects in terms of SharePoint Online, how you can manage your team tasks and the integration with the familiar tools such as, Outlook. Learn how to create the sites and load documents and share them, setting up tasks and ideas. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer any questions if they've actually come in for you. So we've got one here. They're working in Outlook for Mac and setting a reminder follow-up email, get a no due date. Is there a solution? What I'll do is I will find out for you, and we can actually get back to you, Deborah, if it's giving you a no due date. We'll get someone to reply and find out. And we've also got our Yammer, we can ask you there. A good way to file emails? Look, certainly there is. I set up an awful lot of rules. And the thing is, you can actually set up for every single mailbox, you can actually set up your amount of rules that you have in here. So setting up rules is a really important component. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over into my screen share. And in terms of another question we've got here, changing the color as it is displayed. I'm not sure in terms of which color it is, whether you're talking about conditional formatting or on the calendar such as your categories. If maybe you could just reply in terms of whether it's actually to do with categories or not. Okay. So when I've come in here and I'm looking at things like rules, there are some really quick and easy ways. The one good thing about rules is if you do a right click and you go junk, you can go block a sender, never block, or look at your junk mail options and put a whole heap in, number one, to get rid of junk. If we're talking about rules and working with rules that are actually coming in or out, one of the great things about rules, if I go create a rule and I've done a right click from an email, rather than going up to the top, it takes the information specifically from your mail, and then you can start to go, it's anything from David, so I'm going to move it into the deleted items, for example. So maybe it's someone that you are no longer having to deal with, and I can then go, okay, and that rule that's actually created, and I can start to then move these over, and that rule will come up. Right, let me go to rules, managing my rules, has now actually come in, and I can start to run the rules. I've got a lot of rules that I actually have ticked off, and the reason I have them ticked off is that when I'm done at the end of my day or the week, I come in and then I run the rules. So it could be recognize everyone that is to do with my manager, or I've marked as complete, or a newsletter, now I've dealt with them all, and I go run these rules now, and I go select and run them. So it's a really great way to have them not run immediately the moment they hit your mailbox. And I do this all the time. I've got approximately 180 rules, so it manages my mailbox for me at the end of the week. It only takes you clicking it once and setting those rules up, and then it makes it that little bit easier for you. Okay, so in terms of the colors that it actually does in terms of the default colors within your mailbox, look, the default in terms of your blue and black, you do have your conditional formatting. It comes in as a part of your settings. So if you look in your settings, within your settings you can start to set up things like your fonts, the colors, the rows, the formats, conditional formatting. So I have a lot of conditional formatting, such as when I'm in here, if it's coming in from a manager, for example, I've gone and I've actually added one based on a manager, and it could be, okay, so anything to do with Alan, and Alan's emails are going to be a bit bigger in terms of their size, italics, and I'm going to turn them red, for example. And then the condition is anything that comes in, and it's from Alan, who's the VP. Okay, whenever I get an email, it will actually tell me, and it comes up as highlighted red. So there are different ways to be able to work with the colors that come in. We've got is it good practice to have numerous folders in your email rather than just one? Look, research has actually found that there's not a lot of difference in terms of searching for your mail compared to filing and having it in folders in trying to find something. So there's not a lot of difference in terms of timing. However, the one thing that you will actually find is it's a matter of how you physically work in your day. If you've got a mailbox with 10,000 items in it, it is very, very easy for you to start missing something that gets pushed further and further down. I usually recommend different features such as turning on, say, so say if I was in here, I like to have things shown as a conversation, and then that way it actually draws them all together underneath one conversation. You know, that's some of the different features that can actually support you there. It could be you have just one folder that once you've done it, make sure you drag it and get rid of it, get it out of your mailbox. The cleaner your inbox is, the easier it is going to be for you to function. My rules are you handle it once, no more than twice, because every time you read it, it's taking away time. If you're like me and you get approximately anywhere between 100 to 200 emails a day, and you've read that mail more than once or twice, which is what we do because we forget about it and we come back and read it the next day, you've then upped your counts to 400 email in a day, and so on and so forth. Okay? So work smarter. These are all tools that can help you. And let's just see, what else do we have here? In terms of a session on archiving in Outlook, we can certainly have a look at archiving. It doesn't, I don't know if it would take a full 15 minutes. I'm happy to show you a little bit around archiving now if you would like. The one thing about archiving is the fact that automatic archiving can mean that it can generate an archive folder for you every single time it starts to do its archiving. Okay, the one thing about archiving is a lot of organisations actually have its own archiving process or document management system. But if you're going to be setting up archiving yourself, one of the things you've got kind of two different ways to get in and start to work with your archiving. Okay, so one is on your File tab. If we've got our cleanups, okay, so we've got our mailbox cleanup and how we actually work with our mailbox cleanup. So we can go based on a particular size, we can start to move our content around a little, okay? We've then got our rules and alerts. So this rules and alerts, it's not actually your archiving. A lot of people will get confused with the rules and alerts in terms of going in and doing archiving. Okay, so depends on how you actually want to run your mailbox cleanup in your settings and understanding your settings. Okay, so when we're in here, and look, if you've got an Exchange, you will have often a lot of your archive features will be available for you in your folder. Okay, as a part of the way that it'll physically work. Okay, we've got. So how do you sign out of Outlook on the RT surface? Okay, so if it's Outlook.com, that's a little different in terms of if you're using an Exchange. So it depends on what you're trying to do on the RT service and whether you're trying to use the app, because you've got both an app, which is a little different than if you're using your desktop version of your application. So we've got a couple of different ways that you can actually work with it. So you've got your tiles, and you can actually in your store have the app. So I'm not quite sure what you've actually got and what versioning you're currently working with. But if you do have it, I mean, closing down and out of it is going to take you out and you can work offline. If you're on your app, that's a very different matter. It is constantly open. Look, the one thing you can do is make sure that it's closed down. If you're on a Surface RT and you drag from the very top black area and you drag down, you can actually close the application, for example. So if I've got it open, let's go and let's open up Internet Explorer. This is an app. I've got it on low res. They're all a bit on low resolution at the moment, so it's not going to let me. Drag from the very top and drag it all the way to the bottom and it will close it down. A few more minutes. Let's have a look what other questions we've got. How can you make sure that your replies are in one particular font size? Very good question. Okay, so that comes as a part of the look and feel of your mail. I'm going to go into my options here. Okay. As a part of my mail, you've got stationery and fonts. So in your stationery and fonts, it's actually going to tell you when you reply or forward to your message, you've got a font and you can actually adjust the size and the color and the look and feel through here. Hopefully that answers your question for you. What else do we have? So under mail options, if update tracking info is turned on, and after updating tracking info is turned on, it doesn't seem to work for meeting invitation response, only for emails that have tracking on. Is this correct? Okay, so let's bring up the options, just so I've double checked and I've got this right. Update doesn't have any comments. It actually works for, in terms of your tracking of information, it is actually more about your meeting responses than it is in regards to your mail. The times that you use your tracking in your mail, you've got your delivery receipts and your read receipts, so it will update the tracking and delete them. But this one here, the update tracking information and delete response that don't contain comments, is very much around your meeting responses. Okay, so if it's got a comment in there, it's not going to delete it out of your mailbox. It's pretty smart in terms of that respect. The tracking information and then moving it, that is also about both the delivery receipts and the read receipts that will actually come in terms of your tracking information. So that's more focused on your delivery and your read receipts if you've got them. Look, if you want to have one that's actually set up about replies, like a accept or decline, more often than not I actually create a rule And that particular rule goes based on whether it's an accept or decline. So I create a new rule. Okay, and as a part of that rule, it's on messages. So we'll do usually a new one. It's a rule on something that I receive. And it will be when, let's just go, it'll be received as I have to pick the right one, which is one, automatically replies. Can be one way to be able to do it. Or you've got flagged for actions, I think it will be. Where's my name? There's one in here that I do all the time. And that's the one where I actually use it based on responses for meeting invites. It is here. I have to have a moment to stop and actually have a read through to grab it. Okay, which is a meeting invitation or updates. So there's a few different features that you can turn on there as well. We've got, does the clutter feature automatically move emails into this folder as it learns by the behavior? Yes, actually, it does. If at any point you're not quite sure, so let me go cancel, let me get out of there. What I'm going to bring is up onto the screen. If you're in, you go and have a look. Let me just go grab that mail. Where did it go? Okay. So underneath the blog, if at any point you want to know anything about clutter, there's a blog on Outlook, and what I can do is I can put this up on Yana for you if you want to go and have a look and a read. And it actually talks about the clutter program, and there's lots of FAQs in here in terms of the frequently asked questions and how it actually learns what it's doing, can you disable it, and that training, okay, how it actually works with it. So what I can do is I can actually supply that. Let me put it in, and I can give that to everyone through Yammer. That's fine. And that looks like we've covered off all the questions today. We've hit just over our 30 minutes. If there's anything else, look, do feel free to join us at any point, okay, in our Yammer network. I answer questions there anytime that you've actually got them, or you can email us. So you can go to the Users Work Wonders with Office. It's aka.ms/Office Users on Yammer. I'm more than happy to answer your questions there, or email us at 0365AU2@microsoft.com. Don't forget, invite others in to register for the sessions. There's a toolkit available on the website, and that's at the microsoft.com/Australia/work-wonders. Seems like everyone's enjoyed the session today. We've had a lot of questions, and happy to help out anytime. And I will see you next week in terms of that, working like a team in SharePoint and understanding your SharePoint projects. Okay, everyone, thank you very much for joining us this week, and we will get ourselves underway and chat at 2 p.m. next week. Thank you all.